Hong Kong. I mean, there are just so many different ways in which sentient beings, are struggling. And some are quite, horrific. Others, may seem minor in comparison, but it's all, it's all suffering, so really having this, giving some thought that we are just one of many in a world that's experiencing, as always, lots of different kinds of experiences. I'm sure there are moments happening right now of incredible kindness or incredible joy, the birth of a child, or the end of the birth of a child. I imagine that's quite joyous. So, so there are all sorts of things happening, but the main idea is to really try to have in your mind this world view, like that all beings are sitting there with us, having the same prayers. So, may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So just take a moment to refresh your motivation if you were here for the meditation, or to generate a new motivation for this class based on whatever reason you chose to show up on this holiday weekend. So we've chosen the activity of thinking about our mind, our heart, from the Buddhist perspective, with the hope that it will benefit our own peace of mind and ripple out to benefit all those around us. And then if you think about the fact that our world is round, all living beings are around us. Okay, so we've reached another pillar in the pillars of joy. This is always one that can be challenging. Acceptance. So it's one of the favorite quotes in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Shantideva's verse, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what's the use of being unhappy if it cannot be remedied? We cannot succeed by denying what exists. The acceptance of reality is the only place from which we change. So how does acceptance relate to joy? Can we see how not accepting leads to suffering? So if we just picture a moment where, you know, we'd really like something to be different, which sometimes isn't every moment. But if we can look at how that habit, that mental churning that goes on, going, why did this have to happen? Or why is it like this? It should be like that. You know, all the ways in which we describe things that we don't like and we don't want right now. You know, what does that mind feel like? What is it? How do you express it in your body?
There can be a hopelessness. I remember when a bunch of us got laid off back in the 90s, one guy just put his face in his hands and said, what am I going to do now? And I you know, I felt bad for him, but I mean, you're out of work, you gotta look for work. That's the situation. Why make it worse?
Okay. Graziella?
Thinking that I feel like a tightness in my body, like there's a lot of energy going to feeling bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. In energy, I say to myself that could go towards accepting what I cannot change.
So let's just look at the disadvantages of resisting what is. You know, so one is that perhaps you're experiencing some, physical tightness or stressful energy. Another might be this feeling of hopelessness. What are other disadvantages?
Anger.
Anger.
A difficulty learning from the experience, because you can't really focus on exactly the reality of what is happening in the moment. You're too busy either denying it or trying to change it to actually recognize how it's actually operating at the moment.
So it blocks wisdom. Would you say that is on the right track with that? It makes us not able to have solutions arise. What other disadvantages?
Keeps you out of the moment.
Keeps you out of the moment, or maybe it keeps you too much in the moment. Depends.
Well, I guess it depends on the content in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sets you up for future suffering too.
In what way?
Well, by creating this habit of not accepting things, and
so it rehearses a habit that's not particularly skillful. You know, it just keeps reinforcing this idea that resisting what is a reasonable response.
and it's also reinforcing self-cherishing, that, you know, it should be according to my story or the way I want it.
Yes, because remembering this, I mean, you know, if we look at it as, of course, our response is from our perspective. Yeah, Francesca.
I'm thinking maybe you won't be able to remedy eventually if you can't accept.
Yeah, because you don't, you're not Like somebody, you're not working on that. You're just, holding on to the idea that it should just be different.
Yeah.
And so like what Rebecca was saying, it's this, Rebecca, what were you saying again? Because it just went completely out of my head.
You mean about the reinforcing the habit, or
No.
about self-cherishing, that this story, we're looking at it from our perspective, and
before that you were saying, that it's going to cause us suffering in the future.
yes.
Because of all those things you followed it with, so this is, so one of the reasons why, we're encouraged to look at the disadvantages of a particular mental habit is to understand that it's possible it's not useful, it's not skillful, it just causes suffering. Now, if we can't replace it with anything else, then perhaps looking at it doesn't really help us. But in this case, the antidote to resistance is acceptance. Now, acceptance, and we have to be very clear, what are some of the things that makes acceptance unappealing? Just, what kind of thoughts do you have about that?
It might be like a really bad habit of mine that just cannot be the case, and it's like a horrible thing when you like see it. It's like a very dark thing when you're like, I can never get out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that sense of hopelessness or resignation, that, if I accept it, then I'm stuck. Okay. So we want to be clear that that's not what is meant by acceptance. Because what are we accepting?
Hopefully.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I?
Yep.
Are you able to hear? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully accepting everything, but for me the difficulty is in accepting the unacceptable and realizing that I'm not agreeing with it or condoning it, such as, I'll say bad behavior on another, or bad, something that's really terrible, accepting it, but not agreeing with the morals or principles of
Okay,
it.
so that's one of the things that we kind of associate with acceptance, that somehow acceptance means agreeing. So let's be clear, that is not what's being meant here. But let's go back to when we're resisting or accepting in time. What are we resisting and accepting? Is it something about the future?
What is now?
It's what is happening now. It's already happened. Acceptance is about what has happened. Acceptance does not determine what happens next. Acceptance is not agreeing. Acceptance is acknowledging what is.
Okay.
Would non-acceptance be, in that case, delusional? Because it's a
Yes.
fact that yes?
Exactly so. This is why it obscures wisdom. When we get caught up in thoughts of if only, what if, da 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 da, we're not spending any energy on just this is what it is. And accepting this is what it is does not determine anything else. Doesn't say how you have to respond. It doesn't say whether it's justified or not, whether it's immoral or not, whether it's good or bad. It is simply acknowledging what is.
I feel like I go so quickly into like denial and like resistance, I don't even notice that I'm not accepting something.
And that's why reflecting on these things, when you're not in the, under the hook of an uncontrolled habit, can be helpful. This is why reflecting on the way we process things, just sitting there thinking about, oh, how did I get myself off track again? How did I get just caught in the spiral of thinking that, bleh, whatever it is, but we do it when we're not going, we need to, this is the purpose of meditation and contemplation, being aware of what's going on with us. And then looking at, oh, does that even make sense? Okay, no, I accept that it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so then giving yourself, trying to develop the habit as soon as you can to go, oh, this happens, this response doesn't help. I mean, that might be 3 days later. We have to start where we are. But slowly, if we keep thinking about it, reflecting on it, imagining ourselves doing it differently, we can finally, because the mind has room. The mind is very fast, and you can train the mind to step back. So we can even just train our mind that at the first hint of distress, in whatever form it's taking, tension in the body, a little, whatever. I mean, those little ways. This is why we need to be very observant about what, how we respond to the world. So that at the very first instant that we realize we're in distress, we can step back. Breathe. And this can happen in the mind. You don't have to show your stress to everybody else in the room. You can, it's about being able to mentally pause.
Mentally pause.
And this pause gives us much more opportunity to choose our response. And we have to practice that as well. Is someone talking? Katrina, did you want to say something?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was earlier. Sorry.
So this pause can give us those seconds, which are really fractions of a second, but just moments of being able to go, okay, this is what is. Now, how do I want to choose to respond to it? And maybe you're not even ready to respond to it, because then you can choose, well, I need more time. Well, so one of the, somebody, Bob, anybody? Okay.
It was me. I changed my mind, but I'm back. So I've taken over the years 3 MBSR courses, meditation-based stress reduction courses.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the sayings were, by John Kabat-Zinn, was stop. It's basically the same thing you're saying. I think it was stop. The acronym was stop. T, take a breath, observe, proceed. And I'm hearing the same exact thing you're saying, correct?
Yeah. He's a Buddhist. I know where he got it from. So, yeah, exactly. These little habits of, and truthfully, it's no different than our parents saying, count to 10. It's whatever we can do to pause and choose how to act as opposed to react based on our habits, especially when our habits are not skillful. So this is why it's worth the time to really think about what is the disadvantage with going the way you're usually going, so that you have some energy behind that desire to pause. You know, some energy that says, I really don't want to create more suffering for myself by the way I'm thinking. So I'm going to pause. You know, I've gotten, you know, I just literally, there's this little catch I feel in my, maybe it's the diaphragm, I don't know where it is, but somewhere, you know, on this body, you know, and it really seems slight. Of course, that probably means 3 hours have passed, but, you know, it seems, you know, just, and then I just know I need to pause, that I am distressed. It may take any, you know, there are many kinds of stress. You know, we can be not at ease because of our reputation. We can not be at ease because we're scared, we're fearful. We can be not at ease because we're just unfamiliar and so uncertain. I mean, there are just, you know, countless ways we can be not comfortable. So it doesn't, you know, this clue doesn't define it for me. It just is my stop sign. And that just comes from paying attention. And it starts by paying attention sort of after the fact. You know, when you've already gotten hooked and you've already acted out or just beat yourself up in some mental way or whatever it is that you do. But then finally, because they always pass, you know, we kind of settle a little bit and we have the, you know, calmness of mind to be able to reflect and look at our own process and start to consider, you know, what could it look like? You know, really picture yourself responding differently. You know, and you can look at various scenarios. And then you can try them out. You experiment. And then you see how that feels. So it's a matter of retraining. And if you have any doubts about your ability to retrain yourself, just think about all the things you have learned. And all the habits you have, you trained yourself in them. It's just unfortunate, some of them that we were born with, we trained ourselves in past lives. So we may not actually remember, but we can certainly see how we've rehearsed them in this life. And we have to let go of certain things, don't we? We have to let go of certain beliefs. You know, perhaps we have a belief that, yeah, I can change a lot of things, but I can't change that. Or it's the only reasonable way to think when this happens. You know, we really have to look at how our beliefs are driving our clinging to a habit. So it's a matter of, you know, there's a lot of thought involved here, but, you know, trust me, you're already doing a lot of thinking. We just want to try to learn how to be able to direct our thinking in more skillful ways in order to reduce our own suffering in every moment. I mean, can you imagine how much less suffering we'd all have if we just didn't resist what is? And again, accepting what is about the past. It's already happened. We accept it's happened. It does not determine what happens next. Now, we can't control external things. But we can control, even though it doesn't feel like it at the moment, our response to things happening. And we can learn how not to respond like a roller coaster to external events, with the highs, lows, you know, the boring bits where you're going up the hill, you know, the valleys after a fall. I loved roller coasters as a kid. I was not totally mentally healthy, however.
Venerable Tendron, Bobby has a question.
Okay.
Hi. So referring back to the MBSR program again, I remember the body scan was a big part of it, and my understanding was to get in touch with your body and have those sensations, whether it's a tension in the stomach or what's happening. And one of the things I got out of it was learning to listen to the body, because the body knows before the mind knows what's happening. Is there a way or some sort of practice, or is there a situation where the mind can know before the body?
The mind always knows before the body. The body is reflecting the mind.
So it knows before that, but we don't know until sometimes we have an ulcer.
We are so distracted that we can't keep, you know, we're not keeping up with our mind. But yogis who practice meditation and who develop strong concentration can follow these moments. I was thinking earlier today as an example of like how, you know, when something like, I remember when a car was getting ready to hit me, you know, I was standing in a parking lot, and how time just slows down in those moments. You know, you can kind of almost feel like you can see each frame of what's happening, you know, and you can see each frame of your thoughts. Oh, I'm in danger. Oh, maybe I need, oh, he's really going to he's still coming, you know, whatever it is. But time just seems to, you know, be sort of, you know, you feel like all of a sudden your life is in slow motion. I mean, it's really a strange experience. Well, that's what a yogi has been able to do. Their concentration is, you know, they're just not getting distracted from their object, which is their own mind, that they can experience all the thoughts. They are aware of all the thoughts. Instead of just the body responding to thoughts and having to give us clues. Hey, pay attention over here, you know?
That clue from the body, is this also a clue that you missed it mentally or in your mind?
Yeah, your mind's already there, and now your body's expressing the stress. Yeah. So this is, you know, so we have this skill. It's not just yogis who have this ability to be able to, you know, because when the object is so vital to us, like I'm going to get hit by a car, your attention's not distracted anywhere. You're right on that moment. So do you follow what I'm saying? So this, you know, so we have this capacity. We just haven't trained ourselves in it. We're much more trained in trying to keep up with, you know, every distraction. Oh, wait a minute, there's a sound over here. Oh, no, look at the bird that just flew by. Oh, you know, we're just all over the place. So what we have to try to do is see the importance, value, just like, you know, I value the idea of not getting hit by a car. We want to value getting to know our mind so that it becomes, you know, very important for us to, you know, notice. Where it's not the external event that is drawing our attention, but understanding the importance of that inner process. For our happiness and suffering It is the only thing. It's this inner process. So it's this, but we have to, see it as a meaningful thing to develop. And we don't have to become a great yogi. Trust me. I can notice this little catch, with my skill at concentration, pretty much anybody can do it. It's really about prioritizing, recognizing this can really matter to your quality of life. Not to mention if you want to become enlightened and benefit others. That being really clued in to what's going on with you, giving yourself space to step back, have a bigger perspective, instead of choosing resistance. Oh, it can't be like that. Shouldn't be like that. This is crazy. I'm not like that. Whatever the conversation we're having, and step back and go, okay, this is what's happened. And then give yourself that space to allow wisdom to bubble up, because we have that too. Or if we don't know anything about how to respond, then we can access information that might help us. But just even training ourselves that stopping, pausing is an acceptable reaction. We don't have to have the answers like that. So being able to just, and this is where we have to develop the practice of being able to sit with acceptance. It's very similar to trying to sit with discomfort. If resistance is what our go-to is, then that means we're not comfortable. So learning how to sit with acceptance. Okay, this is what happened. And then when you go off into the if, oh, okay, nope. This did happen. This is the way it is. Right, wrong, good, bad. Then we can give us that extra space to choose what we do next. And so we want that wisdom of Shantideva's verse. Oh, if I can remedy it, there's no need to worry about it or be anxious or stressed or angry. And if I can't do anything about it, there's nothing that I can do in the next moment or the next year or whatever to change this situation. Also, what use is it to be angry, to get, trapped in daydreaming about how it, could be different? Because there's a difference between daydreaming about how it could be different and problem solving to make it different. And you might need a little of daydreaming in order to, spark new ideas. But, trying to resist what's happened doesn't spark that. I mean, so, all right.
Robert has a question, Venerable Tendron, and Francesca did have her hand up. I don't know if she changed her mind.
Oh, so what type of meditation can you do, or can you just set a time, say like 10 minutes on your clock or whatever, and think about how unskillful. Like pick a scenario and just think about like how you replayed it over and over and just, you know what I'm saying, I guess? Okay.
Yes, exactly that. So you can just simply reflect at a quiet time. You really do want it to be, to do your best with it not being a highly distracted time. So whether it's just sitting quietly at your desk, sitting on your meditation cushion, meditation chair, whatever, try to zero in on the, scenario you're trying to use, and then you see how it was. You get a clear idea of how you've responded in the past, blah, blah, blah. And then you try to, imagine it differently. Like, okay, what if I brought, patience to the situation? What if I brought to myself? I mean, this is all about, providing yourself with the conditions that will help you handle whatever's going on in a useful way, not a stressful way, not a way that's trying to run away from what has happened, not a way of just angry at the world for it happening, whatever it is, so it's this, so this is sort of a way of practicing taking and giving on yourself, or you picture a situation. This is Tonglen for yourself. You picture the situation that you've experienced in the past, have compassion, but then you picture it for yourself in the future, happening in some other way, in the future, and picture sending yourself with each exhale all the strengths you need to respond differently. And then you inhale all the distress that you have a habit towards, and so it's this, it's just practicing Tonglen for yourself at a future moment. But the main point is that this requires a lot of thought. You want to think about, okay, this is what I've been doing. This resistance, this anger, this, clinging to what what was the minute before this thing happened, and really look at, what possibly, like, okay, acceptance. What does that mean? So that we don't get confused about it. So we don't think it's resignation, that we don't think it's agreeing, that we don't think it's weak, that we don't think it's whatever it is. We need to explore our own belief system. I don't have the words to describe your belief system. So you have to look, and then you kind of go, okay, well, if I pause and I understand that accepting what has happened does not mean that dictates how I have to respond. Then how might I respond? This is like, the Olympic athlete, really trying to visualize themselves doing the perfect whatever. It helps. Science proves it helps. Because it's like it helps the athlete because it's amazing how many, self-defeating thoughts we can have. Well, I can't do that, and how that gets in the way. So this is why it's also helpful to think about Buddha potential. If the Buddha's teachings are correct, we have the capacity to train our mind to never have these self-defeating or other harming thoughts. So let's practice that. So take a moment, shake off whatever. And sit up straight, your eyes gaze downward, shoulders relaxed, feet on the floor. Take a few deep breaths to just really settle into this moment. And then bring to mind a situation like this that's happened perhaps recently, where it was hard for you to not just go into denial or resistance or blame. Try to picture where you were, who you were with, what was said. And be aware of any sensations you might be experiencing in the body as you recreate it in your mind. Be aware of the suffering that was present, the frustration, or anger, or disbelief, confusion. And try to generate some self-compassion for the suffering you experienced. Just wishing yourself to be free of this suffering. And allow this compassion to help you generate an intention to do something about your suffering. I will work on my mind to reduce my suffering. Knowing that this won't just benefit yourself, benefit all those you come in contact with. And think about the disadvantages of just resisting what is and the advantages of accepting what is. But be very clear about what accepting means. It's just the wisdom of knowing what is. It's not a judgment of good or bad. It's not a conclusion of being stuck or unstuck. It's just an acknowledgement, a recognition of what is. Now imagine something similar happening in the future. And again, picture where you would be, perhaps who you would be with, what words might be said. And imagine this future you, imagining recognizing that first moment of distress, whether it's in the mind or in the body. Now imagine that with each in-breath, you're inhaling that distress from your future you in the form of dark smoke. When you inhale it into your heart, it just destroys all the misconceptions, all the wrong views, all the unskillful habits. They just disappear. And imagine that with each exhale, you're breathing out all your strong capacities of wisdom, compassion, love, patience. And this future you breathes those qualities in, able to draw from them, from that deep well in their hearts. Acceptance, patience, compassion, giving this future you everything you could possibly need. to ease the stress. Allowing a pause in the mind of that future you. Be able to step back with a fresh perspective. And with this fresh perspective, imagine what you might say or do or not say in this future moment. Try to generate in the mind an openness to the possibility of changing this habit that's harmed you in the past. Knowing that you've learned many things, you've changed many habits already. So exhaling the wisdom of knowing these things to that future you. Have confidence that easing your suffering is a meaningful priority. But only if we do it skillfully. Not just easing a moment of suffering in some temporary, exceedingly brief way, but in a lasting way with acceptance, wisdom, kindness, compassion. Really imagine this future you, drawing from the you of this moment, where you're practicing, where you're not blindsided by events. Now really try to understand That taking care of our minds in this way, taking care of ourselves in this way, will not only benefit ourselves, but ripple out to benefit those around us. So check in with your body. And when you're ready, move your fingers and toes and gently open the eyes. Questions, thoughts, complaints?
Thinking about that stuff is not fun.
No, that's a very important point. It's also not fun when we're caught in a moment of stress. So it's sort of like, going to the dentist and getting your teeth cleaned. Well, with these young people, it probably doesn't hurt at all. Those who've benefited from sealants and flossing and all those things as young people. But anyway, so picture you're doing something for your health that isn't fun. Whether it's lifting that, that last repetition of, a weight, or the last stretch of your walk or run. We do so many things that aren't particularly pleasant at the moment because we know they have benefit. And working with the mind is no different. It's hard. It feels like I find it's like as hard as going to the gym to try to sometimes interrupt my habit energy. But I've really seen the payoff. So it becomes easier over time. But sometimes it feels really hard because of the suffering that's involved, or the lack of confidence we have that we can change it, or the work that we know it's going to take. So there's a little bit of everything in there. I have basic laziness arise at all times, But that just leads to suffering.
Tendron?
Yeah.
I have a thought. So when I was doing the meditation, I was thinking about expectations.
Yeah. Good.
And that was what came up for me, that when I'm in that situation where I feel I'm, thinking, I'm not accepting a person in particular I have in mind.
We always.
Yeah. And it's been going on for years now. Maybe 4 or 5 years. Okay. But anyway, radical acceptance, basically, just accepting whatever the situation is. And
see, that's the starting point. It really is just this basic acceptance. This is the way it is. This is what was said. This is what was done. And that is a very important first step. Beyond going to radical acceptance, beyond going to the point where you just accept someone for exactly who they are, we have to start with just accepting this moment. If we try to think, I need to accept this whole person exactly as they are, we might not get very far. That's kind of overwhelming. So it's really just, okay, this is what happened. And one of the things about acceptance that, you know, one of the reasons I think it's a pillar of joy is it does help us understand the disadvantages of expectations.
Mhm.
You know, as I remind us often, we don't have control out here. How much control do we have in here? Let's face it, you know. Samsara is considered uncontrolled, you know, its existence in uncontrolled death and rebirth, you know. So it reflects our state of mind. The fact that we're not in control, we're being pushed by our habits. So our past actions and our habits, all the delusions that we, you know, have really developed. Not sure we perfected them, but some of mine feel pretty perfected. But it's this, you know, understanding that expectations set us up for resistance to what is. And it sort of can guarantee disappointment. It's like, okay, let's build in some suffering here by having expectations. This does not mean, again, accepting what is and not clinging to expectations or even really giving expectations much mental energy does not mean that you're resigned to things not working out. It means that you're just open to each moment. Because we've talked many times about how expectations block our ability to experience what is, even the positive stuff. We miss it because some event or some conversation didn't live up to the expectation. We miss what happened because all we're looking for is this person living up to our expectation. Are they doing exactly what I thought they'd do? You know, so they're actually living up to our expectation. And we're also living up to our habit. So anyway, but yes, you know, Francesca's right. I mean, we have to really look at how our expectations are a superimposition on things that haven't happened yet. It's pretending we can predict the future. That somehow hoping something will happen is going to make it happen. That's different from having confidence, you know, in being able to respond in every moment in some sort of coherent, intelligent, you know, loving way. You know, Rebecca, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, Brian and Carolina had a question and Robert has a question.
Am I just missing these hands up? Are there hands up for you?
Mine was up, but I lowered it. But I just wanted to make a comment.
Okay.
I can totally understand what you're talking about, because for me, in my experience, meditation has really brought me to a single pointedness in my mind, and I've noticed it a lot. With regard to, in the beginning, yeah, it's hard, and like you were saying, you got to exercise it, and the more you do it, the more you get into it, and it's a lot of fun actually, and it's like incredible how quick it just starts.
Don't get attached.
And one other thing is that I've noticed what helped me a lot is having and this is due to you, Venerable Tendron, is having a good understanding of impermanence, things that arise, always rising and falling.
Yeah, that's the Buddha.
And suffering. And what was I going to say?
Well, this is the thing.
I don't like to use the word present and future anymore. I'm always, I think labeling with things like that just kind of clouds my mind and brings me back to myself, to the self, the grasping. So when
and I think Brian's bringing up a good point here. Is if we spend a lot of time with expectations, if we spend a lot of time with the what ifs or if only types of minds, if we do that, then it is really helpful to practice some mindfulness. You know, not what is or what if, you know, but just being, I mean, I do mean what is, but just, you know, bringing yourself back to this moment, knowing that you can't predict the future and that the past doesn't predict the future. So thinking about the past or the future may not be helpful. It does not mean, though, we don't learn from things. It also doesn't mean that we don't have to plan. We do have to plan. But when we realize that our habit of thinking about the future or the past is giving us a distorted perspective on the now, because we're making up stories based on what we want, or sometimes, like when we're about to visit with family, we might be making up stories about things that we don't want that we expect to happen. So, you know, we do it in all arenas. So mindfulness, and of course, mindfulness is exactly what lets us pause. Mindfulness is what is the state of mind that brings awareness to what we're thinking or doing. You know, we're just aware so that we can recognize the distress in the body or mind and pause. And you can only do that now. You can practice in your mind by reflecting on a future scenario and, you know, really imagine yourself being able to pause. That can help us train our mind. But if instead we create an expectation for us to be able to do something in the future and then we don't, what does that cause? Nothing.
Disappointment or suffering.
Yeah, just like,
So,
you know, you get a letter F, you know. So that's not the point of reflecting on this. It is just simply of trying to keep our mind, our heart open to choice in every moment, you know. But we're going to have to, you know, navigate our habit energy.
would that be the same as what I'm hearing, if I'm understanding you correctly, having an intent but not a goal?
Yes, an intention's not a goal.
Right. I'm saying having an intent rather than having the goal.
Yeah. You know, the intention is more of our reasoning and motivation, you know, and, you know, that we're trying to engage in, but it is not a good, you know, this is, I guess it's maybe the difference between a skillful intention and a not so skillful intention, because we can't control outcomes. You know, I mean, it's like the Olympics, you know, you can, you know, like I always think of, what was his name? Greg Louganis and his dives. I particularly remember him because he was one of the first, I remember talking about this, practicing in your head, being able to do this perfect dive or whatever. But I can't watch diving because I just know they're going to hit the board. And, you know, I had a cousin who did that, so I can only watch replays. So, and hope that they don't show those things if they happen. But the point is, you know, What was my point? Okay, so like an Olympic diver can think, I've done the perfect dive and not get the points. You know, because judging is, you know, from a particular perspective. It's not your perspective, it's someone else's. You're putting your hands in someone else's perspective. You know? So, I mean, this is the thing. This isn't about trying to tell ourselves, I'll get it right next time. That is likely to be an obstacle. It's more of just allowing your mind to consider the possibility that it can go differently. And that there's some skills to help us with that, like pausing. Like understanding that acceptance does not mean liking it, you know, good, bad, whatever. It is just simply a recognition of what has happened. And of course, it's from your perspective. So that's why, like, it's, you know, sometimes you have to have reality checks, right? Where you know, you might discuss it with someone that you trust and know well and who knows you well, you know, just as a sounding board, but to see if your perspective was even remotely, you know. Yeah, so we have to, you know, these are the things. We have to understand that our perspective is operating all the time. And that perspective has filters, has preconceived ideas, has all sorts of beliefs, you know, things that we have, you know, that are based, we have habits based on things that we haven't thought about in decades, or maybe even in this life at all. You know? So that's why, yay, we can look at them now and decide for ourselves now in the present moment. Is this skillful? Is it true? You know, we don't have to take our word for it based on habit energy. Because it might be based on wrong view, misperception, misconception. So reflecting on things gives us an opportunity to step back, look at it from a broader perspective, bring to the scenario, you know, our understanding of things now, not as when we were a child or some previous lifetime, you know, from the perspective of Buddha potential. That we have the capacity to do all kinds of things, develop all kinds of minds, you know, and all kinds of wisdom. That we are not stuck. That in fact, everything's changing in every moment. But we do have to be aware enough to be able to choose how to respond. Otherwise, we're just operating on habit energy. So we just react.
A thought? I have a question, or actually something I get stuck and confused on. Not that I intend to, not that I ever could rewrite the vocabulary in the 8 pillars. When I think of acceptance and people that I've discussed the subject with, or the word with, becomes so confusing just because the semantics, if the word acknowledged, we're there instead of people, oh yeah, of course I acknowledge it happened. If I didn't, I'd not be living in this reality. So acceptance is confusing. I found for myself and others that I spoke to, just that, you know, they hear, oh yeah, I agree with that. I accept it. That's okay. And then that's just a thought of mine where it's becomes an issue, acceptance versus acknowledging.
Well, that's what I was talking about in the beginning. Yes, we have to understand that acceptance does not mean that you agree with what happened. I mean, it has nothing to do with that, because agreement is implying that somehow what's happened is, you know, you're going to another subject. Is it good or bad that it happened? Do you like it or do you not like it? It's, you know, and yes, sometimes we disagree even on what happened, but usually that involves going beyond observation, where we're reading into, you know, other people's minds, trying to just, you know, decide what their motivation was, or what, you know, and sometimes it can be though as simple as what were the actual words said. And these are things we want to be aware that if we're not mindful, we may not be hearing what actual words were said. Mm-hmm. So then you have to check up and say, can I, you know, let me just repeat back to you what I think I heard, you know, to make sure I've heard correctly, you know. But it's, you know, when you start going to the judgment things about whether it's good or bad, or that you agree or not agree, that's a different subject. So in this context, acceptance is just merely, this is what it is, you know. Now that may include, it's just this, what we don't want it to include is this idea that acceptance means, what's the word I want to use? Acquiescence, essence? What is that word? Like that somehow, you know, I'm going to let the fact that this is what it is determine my next step. You know, in the sense of, I'm not going to do anything to change it. This is where Shantideva's, you know, quote about, you know, if it can be remedied, say you don't like it or you don't agree with it or whatever, if you can make, you know, if you can change it, then go for it. But if you can't, then this resistance to what is just going to cause you suffering. So we can think about that this week. You know, where we're, you know, really trying to observe what is, and to just kind of be aware of how, you know, how we respond to that, our reaction, our habit energy around it. Because we're not going to like everything that is, are we? We're not going to agree with it. You know, of course not. But we can, you know, we can't even start if we don't know what is.
Well, except that even what is my interpretation of what is.
Yes.
You know,
but we want to get better and more skillful at recognizing when it is that you're interpreting the meaning in some way due to your perspective. That doesn't mean it doesn't have any validity. But it means that the fact that you interpret something one way and your partner interprets it a different way, accepting that. Acceptance isn't about who's right. So it's a very layered word, isn't it?
Yes, because you know, what you did, I don't know, in the meditation you said acceptance is the wisdom of, I understood, admitting what's going on.
Not admitting. It's
What is the
acknowledging.
word?
It's just
Acknowledging. Recognizing what's going on. But that's
What
always
is,
going to be
not
my
what's going on. What's going on sounds like, you know, you've got the whole story. A nuance is something else, isn't it? It's just you recognize, like if your boss says, I'm sorry, I'm laying you off. It's this recognition, oh, I've just been laid off. It's nothing else. It's not, oh, I wonder if I can do something about that. You can't do anything about it if you're not able, you know, if all you're stuck in is, how can you lay me off? That's not right. That's not possible. Going home and thinking, it can't have happened. So yeah, give it some more thought, Katrina. I mean, it really, acceptance isn't about what you're going to choose to do next. In this context, it's really understanding what is. And what most of it is, as His Holiness is referring to here. So with a deeper understanding of reality, you can go beyond appearances and relate to the world in a much more appropriate, effective, and realistic manner. You must not hate those who do harmful things. The compassionate thing is to do what you can to stop them, for they are harming themselves as well as those who suffer from their actions. So as this is saying, it's not about not trying to change things that are harmful to others. It's understanding, you know, like if we bring the Buddhist perspective to it, you know, trying to understand that living beings are trying to be happy and avoid suffering, and we're completely mistaken about how to go about it. And we're operating from this ignorance of how we exist all the time. But that consciousness also has Buddha potential. So if we can step back and not take everything so narrowly, you know, oh, it's just my life, it's just this moment. And how we respond to it is going to affect how much we suffer. Because our states of mind are part of our suffering. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was young, you know, I had a lot of energy around, you know, well, if something's not fair, you know, you should be able to just fix it, you know, and the people who resisted that were somehow, you know, idiots or terrible or whatever, you know, whatever I was in the mood for that moment, you know. And these teachings are about if you want more joy in your life, more contentment in your life, don't hate the people. Understand that there's injustice in the world because of ignorance, self-cherishing, misunderstanding what leads to happiness and suffering. Understanding karma, we try to bring in this, you know, perspective that says, we've created the cause to live in a world where there's injustice. So what can I do about that? Well, I can work on my mind. So I am not coming from that ignorance myself. Oh, we're out of time. Okay. So there's lots to think about. Please bring your thoughts with you next time. Thanks for your participation. As always, it's wonderful. We should have had our little group so you could say hello to each other. But before that, we'll, are there announcements, Rebecca? Until there are no suffering sentient beings at all, which includes us. So it's a win-win, win-win-win. So we'll recite Shantideva's prayers. We recite these because they're wonderful, but you know, also because it's like His Holiness's, one of His Holiness's favorites. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments, whatever diseases there are in the world. May they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you very much. And remember that you, if you did miss His Holiness's teachings, or if you haven't caught Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings, both are available, through their website. So if you go to fpmt.org, there'll be links to the teachings or transcripts of the teachings, all sorts of good stuff. And if you go to His Holiness's website, there'll be a link to the YouTube channel for his teachings as well. So they're recorded too. So this is one great thing about this particular circumstance in time, is that everybody's using technology in a way that gives us all access to teachings that ordinarily we might not have access to. So yay, tech people. Thank you. So everybody unmute and say goodbye.
Bye.
Have a good week. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Venerable.
Thank you.
Thank
Venerable
you.
Tendron.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Thank
day.
Thank you, Tendron, and everybody. Bye.
Bye.